Welcome to Bayou Time. I'm Jacob DeGate, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the problems with crawfish season this year. So we have on the line to join us via Zoom. We have Todd Fontenot, who's with an extension agent with Louisiana Ag Center. Todd, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we hear, everybody's seen the high prices already. And predictions for a bad year. Can you tell us a little bit about that and if there's any hope for down the line?
Okay, well, our crawfish producers experienced an extremely hot and dry fall, mostly the fall. What the crawfish area of production that I work with predominantly is in Southwest Louisiana. It is the rice crawfish production area. So what that means, these fields were in rice production throughout the spring and most of the summer. And this rice was harvested in the late summer, usually beginning in late July into August and into September. So it's during that point that we were so hot and dry. The crawfish ponds are then filled with water, or as we call it, flooded up in October, beginning of October, when we get our first cool fronts. And so that's when the water is reapplied to these rice fields to begin the process of preparing for your crawfish crop. Yes, so during that period, we experienced a lot of very dry and hot conditions. And unfortunately, when producers began flooding up fields, we were still hot and dry, did not receive any heavy rainfalls. And what we believe happened in some cases is that the burrows may have cracked open because the crawfish do burrow, as we all know, into the levees and the perimeters of the fields, whether it's field roads or levees. And in some cases, these burrows may have opened up and dried out. If that was the case, then the crawfish could have died. The other issue that we believe we're facing is that these burrows need to be softened up in some kind of way for the crawfish to re-emerge. And even though a field is flooded or has several inches of water in it, those upper levels of the burrows may remain dry and hard. So until you receive some very good soaking rains, those burrows make it impossible for those mother crawfish to burrow up or dig their ways out of the burrows. And we think that has been something else that has contributed to the low populations of crawfish that we're currently seeing.
All right. So what is the life cycle of a crawfish, the length of time, and what is how old are they, the ones that you eat or you boil?
Right. Okay. Well, to understand all that, let me just go back a little bit into the way our production system is set up. As I mentioned earlier, most of the ponds in this area of Southwest Louisiana are in a rice rotation, which, as I explained earlier, that means a rice crop was cultivated on these same fields that become crawfish ponds. They're rice ponds in the beginning part of the year, and they become crawfish ponds in the later part of the year. So it's the same fields. Mm-hmm. So what our crawfish producers will do is they'll stock or reseed these fields in the spring. This is done in late April into May, sometimes into June, when these fields are seeded or stocked with young crawfish. They are just added or just put into the rice, the growing rice crop. They'll then become acclimated into those conditions, and they come from either neighbors' ponds or the same producer's ponds that he is fishing. So from that point, they will, if they have not already matured sexually, they will continue to mature. They will also mate, and after mating, sometimes after that is about the process or the time when the rice fields are drained for harvest. At that time, these crawfish will burrow into the levees or into the perimeters of the field, as I mentioned also earlier. Then they will remain in those burrows, in which the young crawfish will then develop into eggs, and then to the point that they can hatch. They're really hatched and released from the female crawfish when they emerge from the burrows. Now, so if the fields were flooded up in the neighborhood of early October, Depending on the weather conditions, naturally, the warmer it is, the more active crawfish will be. The more active they are, the more they're going to feed and grow. So normally at that time of the year, it is possible for crawfish to emerge, the young to emerge out, and in 2 months period can be large enough for harvesting. Naturally, the longer you can go and with good conditions, they'll grow into a better size. And that's normally what we see in the spring when they have more time to grow.
I see. I see. Well, we got about a minute left. Can you tell me, is there any chance for later in the season that we could see any better harvest this year?
Well, we're definitely staying hopeful that crawfish were late to emerge from the burrows. As I mentioned, or we did not really receive good soaking rains until into December. So some of the crawfish may not have emerged with young until that time. The problem with the late emergence is the longer the crawfish stay in the burrow, the more chance there is of mortality. Also, it is harder for these crawfish to burrow out because it was so hard. So there may have been mortality of what we call holdover crawfish, the first crawfish that emerge. So we're hoping crawfish did emerge later and that there are young that are out there. When we have seen some, in some cases, more young after these heavy rainfalls that we've received.
All right. Well, we thank you very much for informing us and giving us a little lesson on the life of a crawfish. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. And stay tuned for more right here on HTV.